All right, welcome everybody.
Woo!
Yeah.
Holy free holies, you guys like lawyers.
Got to get hyped for the lawyer panel.
I
know.
know.
We are going to be starting here in just a minute or two, but to preface, like all good lawyers, we have some disclaimers for you. One, this is not legal advice and we're not your lawyers. Please do not ask us questions in the form of, what should I do in this specific situation that's happening to me right now? The answer is hire a lawyer. Second, we are not here to speak for our respective employers or organizations. This is just our own personal, single human opinions and feelings on what we're talking about. And as will quickly be made apparent as we introduce ourselves, there are some things we're just not going to talk about. Some of it should be pretty obvious, like ongoing cases, things we're personally involved in, client confidences, so just don't ask. But before we tell you more about ourselves, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Take it away, Joe.
Yeah, so we've been doing this panel for a hot minute, and it's always really interesting for us to do a quick demographic survey. So how many people here in the audience would consider themselves developers of games? Okay. How many of you are looking for free legal advice and just got really disappointed? Yeah. Cool. How many of you are just gamers, just interested in this stuff? Yeah. And how many of you are like interested in potentially becoming a lawyer or actually lawyers yourself? Yeah. You just got barred. Congratulations. Hell yeah. That number of aspiring lawyers jumps every year. I love that. That's so cool. No, man. More cool lawyers is good.
Awesome. In fact, congratulations. You get to come and take the first piece of cool merchandise from up here. Seriously, come get one.
We've got a lot of cool stuff. We should explain where it comes from.
We do have a couple corporate sponsors. We'll get to that as we go through. But seriously, come up to the stage and take something. First dibs for you, madam. Good job.
Which bar?
New York.
New York. That's a hard bar. That's a hard bar. Good job.
Yeah, that's rough. Good job. All right, so let's just kick things off. My name is Sam Castry. I'll be your master of ceremonies today. I have my own law firm in the Chicago area. I typically deal with small indie developers, and I don't really have a typical day, honestly. It really runs a gamut from whatever comes in the door that day, from LLC setups, more business law after the fact, compliance issues, copyright and trademark filings. I've gotten to the point now some of my clients are big enough to have actual employees, so figuring out Illinois labor law, whoa. I've even done the occasional will or legal name change for a client who happens to want it. So I wouldn't call myself a jack of all trades because there's stuff I just don't want to touch. But by and large, it's a lot of different things as the lawyer for the game developer for the business, and that's a lot of what I do. I've also recently joined a firm in Indiana as their intellectual property expert, a golf legal group, so soon be adding an Indiana law license to my repertoire, and that'll be fun too. And that's me in a nutshell currently. Let's take it away. Joe.
Sure.
Who are you?
Hi everybody. I'm Joe Newman. I have been a video game lawyer for over a decade. Before I was a lawyer, I was a MAGFest attendee, and came to panels like these, and this was a big part of why I did what I did. But I've worked in a number of different capacities. So I worked in-house for a couple of years for Electronic Arts as Privacy and Consumer Protection Counsel. Then I went over to Ubisoft for a couple of years doing senior privacy counsel for the U.S. and Latin America, and did a lot of GDPR work. From there, I went to private practice. I was at a law firm called Fenwick & West, just a big law, based in California. Did that for a number of years, did private practice, and I'm now at a startup called KID, which you probably maybe haven't heard of, but you probably will by the end of the year if you play a lot of video games, because we're doing a lot of work in the kids protection and privacy safety world, which is a very hot topic and something near and dear to my heart.
Hey y'all, I'm Laura Marston. I'm in-house counsel, deputy general counsel at ZeniMax Media. So I represent Bethesda Game Studios, specifically Fallout, Starfield, Elder Scrolls franchises, also BGS's mobile games, and then the BGS Creations Marketplace. I've been a lawyer. I've been in the games industry at ZeniMax for 10 years, and I've been a lawyer for a little over 20, always in an intellectual property. I started off as a litigator. I was a litigator for about 7 or 8 years, and then switched over to transactional work before going in-house. In my role at ZeniMax, I work on everything under the sun. I'm very much a generalist. Everything from, privacy and legal compliance, be it with U.S. regulations or those abroad. And as my own disclaimer, none of which I'm going to talk about today, especially as it relates to Bethesda's games, but I did bring a lot of swag, so please participate, because there's a lot of Fallout and Starfield swag up here if you want some. So.
Yeah, if anyone who asks a good question, come up and grab a piece of merch after you ask your question.
By the way, can I quick interject?
Oh, yeah.
I just got word that they're turning people away. There's over 50 people in line, which is that's
What?
ridiculous. So give yourselves a round of applause for getting into what is apparently a very hotly attended panel at MAGFest. Yeah, AJ and Anthony can't get in. Wow.
Not to brag too much, I know we usually have a decent crowd, and some of you are longtime fans of the show. And we appreciate that, but that is insane.
That's
dude.
nuts.
That is
Wow.
crazy. All right.
Well,
Who are you,
great,
Jay?
thank you. Hey, I'm Jay Sinha. I'm with the U.S. Department of Justice.
So watch it.
I have free indictments up front. I'm just kidding. Basically, I'm a privacy and cybersecurity attorney with the Office of Privacy. I mentioned I've been doing it for 11 years, and my role is as part of international data transfers, helping make sure that, as you know, games are so global and they start that way, and data has to flow in order for it to run, and that happens at a treaty level. And so the EU-US data privacy framework is a big part of what I help with. But there's also other things that matter to video game companies and developers too, right? You have to deal with a lot of attempted fraud, people's accounts being stolen, and so assisting with prosecutions. We also do a lot of things to help with insider threat, to the extent that the industries are dealing with people who are ruining a game launch or making it hard and taking your property after you guys don't, developers have an argument. We can help with that. And I think the final part too is I spend a lot of time thinking about the horizon, where we're going and all the data collection that happens. And so to the extent that I can help with the video game community, I do, and I'm just grateful that they're so. I was going to mention my favorite games and stuff, but she already listed them. Oh, and a cheeky breaky to everybody out in the zone. Thank you. All right.
Great, and then I'm Scott Kelly. I'm a partner with the law firm Banner Wyckoff here in Washington, D.C. I'm the patent guy here. A lot of us do IP law, but I work on software inventions and protecting those. I have a background in computer science. I've been doing this for 12 years at this point, and I've been doing this MAGFest panel for about 7, 9? I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But in addition to doing patents, I help clients get patents, defend themselves against patent accusations, or bring patent accusations. But I also, from time to time, have taught game law at American University. And so the things that I'm really passionate about, besides the software side, copyright policy, I do a lot of work with AI, and I just really love games and love MAGFest. And I will pick up Jay's mantle, and I will say my favorite game right now is Oxygen Not Included. Put the question to the rest of the panel.
Gosh, favorite game right now? I don't know.
You gotta name a Bethesda game. I think.
Yeah.
You don't.
I'm a sucker for the original Fallout, actually. So, should also just say everyone else said I've also been in practice a little over a decade. So that's
Yeah.
about what you're getting from all of us. 10+ years experience.
Favorite game?
Oh, my current favorite game is Swatch Hero.
I'm addicted.
You stole mine. Shout outs, because I actually was fortunate enough to be on the team that was making the swatches, so part of the development team, and it has been all I've played for like the last 3 months. I'm actually pretty sick of it, but it's really good, and you guys should play it.
All right, so that's who we are right now. But really, this panel is not about us, even though we build it as such. This is about you talking to us about whatever is on your mind that's not protected by lawyer-client confidentiality. Anything you want to know, from news stories to what we do on a day-to-day basis, anything crossing your mind along those lines, or anything generally related to law and video games.
Yeah, I think
Who wants to know stuff?
Yeah, I think you've heard from the panel that we have lawyers from every walk of life here and a lot of experience, so we're happy to answer these questions.
All right, I think the first hand was you in the front with the white shirt, glasses.
So what goes on behind the scenes with dealing with like cheaters and leakers in games to prevent like either client, like customer data or just content that the team is working on from being released?
So question is, what goes on behind the scenes with cheaters and leakers and some of this data transfer? And I'm not sure what all you're allowed to say, but...
No, I'll just say quickly, generally, the question, there's two things that happen. Depending on certain levels, there's state laws, and some companies want to deal with it in-house, right? This is an accident. And so I'll take to your question about someone took stuff that belongs to the company out of it. That tends to be a civil matter. But sometimes it can rise to really have a level, right? A lot of the companies, everyone I think is familiar with the Rockstar hack, right? A lot of those issues about cybersecurity and protecting us from hackers and our hardworking companies that put a lot of time into it is making sure that they have what they need when a breach does happen. And so FBI Cyber Division really plays a big role in backing up the companies. Hey, we're not sure where to start. Or generally, a lot of them are already very sophisticated. These companies are kind of really cutting edge when it comes to like, we have to cover everything. So they generally have like their own security people and stuff, but we help augment it, especially if it's an overseas actor. To your question about the, I guess the other part was about what to do if the data kind of comes out and it starts to, I think that is something that we try to support them with best practices. So I help, you might have a lot of data that goes out the window, belongs to a different number of games, a different number of gamers, right? It's a lot of complexity. So you might, and it might be your first breach dealing with it. Well, a big part of what we try to do is supply them with like expertise. Hey, this is where we would start, this is a suggestion you might do. And again, FBI Cyber Division is a big part of that. And to the extent that it's a foreign actor, I think they get involved very quickly. So I think that's part of the answer. But I know with intellectual property and data breaches is a big part of what you have to do as a privacy lawyer and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've only had to deal with like 1 or 2 breaches, and they're not fun. I mean, you have to, when you talk, one of the first things that happens is that you have to be aware of all of the different data breach notification laws that happen, like even down to the state level. So there are lawyers who specialize in data breach response. It's like it's a full discipline in itself of knowing who you have to contact when, what sorts of like credit monitor. Anyway, I don't have a ton of that I can say because I haven't really dealt with it myself. Other than it's a major headache. I don't know if we want to talk about the IP. Well, we've got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But thank you for the question. Get some merch.
Yeah, come get something. Yeah, there you go. Cool. You, sir, up front.
Just in general, I'm talking of foreign actors, and whether it's gaming or data that they're trying to get, or, because OPM and everything, stuff has been taken for decades now. In reality, if it's a foreign actor, other than trying to block the digital pathway, unless you go in the country and drag them out, I mean, how do you recover anything, in a sense? How do you, if this foreign actor from Nigeria got $50 million worth of data. Big deal, he's in Nigeria, what are you gonna do to him?
Oh, I mean,
So
yeah, please.
okay. Question, when it comes to overseas actors, how do you actually get anything back? What do you do with that?
I'll just speak generally. That's one thing that I feel like as someone who ingests news, you don't hear a lot about it. Hey, someone was harassing someone online. Has anything happened to them? It almost feels like nothing happened, right? But that's an information flow problem, not an action problem. I think I'll just say that if you take a quick look about hackers being, basically arrested. There's a lot of that. If people think cryptocurrency scams, oh, there was a rug pull, nothing happens. That's not true. There's a lot of it, but it's an information flow issue. And I don't feel like I would actually kind of refer you to check online. You can see a lot of the prosecutions and whatnot, but I think I have to pair the line between personal and official capacity, so I'm just going to stop there.
If you want to grab something.
Yeah, delegate my son.
Perfect.
He's my heir apparent, it's gonna be his anyway.
Very good. You, miss in the reddish pink sweater. Yep, waving at me. So how about that Pal World lawsuit, everybody? How about that Pal World lawsuit, essentially? I was actually quoted in an IGN article about a year ago when it was rumblings about the copyright side of things, and I thought, as often happens, most people don't know what they're talking about on the internet. Now, there were a couple blatant things. That one is just Eevee, but colored differently. Like, that's a problem. But this one has a fire-breathing dragon, and so does this one. No one cares. It's fine. You're allowed, as long as they don't look like each other or have similar backstories. I was pretty shocked when it came out that Palworld people were getting sued for patent infringement. I did not see that coming. Neither did most of my friends. So far, I haven't been checking super hard recently. I haven't even seen what the patents are. Like, it was just the announcement. Pocket Pair says, we're getting sued for patent infringement by Nintendo. That's no good. We're going to let you know what happens. And that's the last I've heard anything official about it. So does anyone else actually know what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, there has been more information that came out. And
Okay, good.
I'll go back to our disclaimers. I can't talk about the specifics of any particular case. But in general, to Sam's point, it was very surprising that it was a patent lawsuit and not a copyright lawsuit. They did later release which patents it was. I think one's about a flying mount that sort of switches modes depending on where you are, and another one had to do with the way that the Pal Spheres or Pokeballs came out.
Check the mic. Yeah,
Is
get
this
real
mic
close to
on?
it. Is it not on?
Can I get closer?
You can get closer. Just eat it.
All right. I'm not used to being too quiet. So I mean, without getting into the specifics of the case, there are different patent laws in different countries, and at least looking at Japan has more permissive laws on gameplay. Okay, I'm gonna eat the mic at some point. So
I don't know which one is his.
Yeah, these are a type of gameplay patents that have been, they just don't happen in the US as much anymore, but sometimes they still get through. So we'll see what happens. Japanese patent litigation is a little bit opaque, as we saw when it was first filed. And then it's just a question of where does it go from there. I think that one of the things that I look at in these situations is lawsuits are very expensive, even if you have a good case to make. And so, we've seen that there have been designer rounds, features that get removed from the games, and whether that's a positive or a negative, it feels like the players are the ones who suffer. But it certainly is an interesting one that everybody's watching.
Yeah.
Get your goodie.
All right. Yeah. We'll try to get the mic levels raised too.
We're working on it. Troubleshooting on the fly. Let's take someone more towards the middle back, yellow shirt with some kind of, you, looking down.
Yeah, hi. The main question that I had is, what gets somebody into video game law? Like, what does that process look like? What were your first steps? Things of that caliber.
How does one get into video game law in the first place? Why don't we just kind of go on down the line and tell our life stories? Go for it, Joe.
Sure. I mean, for me, I didn't actually I wasn't super jazzed about being a lawyer. I wanted to work in games. And I had an English degree and a music degree, and it's like, what am I going to do with that? But to be real though, like when I was like first year of law school was the big violent video game Supreme Court case, right? That was like when they were at the highest levels, talking about whether or not you could ban essentially video games for kids. And I got up at 4 a.m. I put on a suit and I went to the oral arguments. And that was the origin story, right? Because hearing these justices talk about the games, and you could tell which justices on the bench had clerks who were gamers. Because they asked really, really specific questions about like, well, what if it was like Mortal Kombat and like the blood was green? Would it not be human? It was a legit question, and and then like Scalia was there and he cracked a joke. He's like, I don't know what she's talking about. It was like, yeah, and like at the time I was doing journalism, and I just like wrote a blog about the case that was like analyzing it but trying to make it sort of accessible. And that for me was like very much the gateway into doing this as a career. Like if you can take super complicated and esoteric legal concepts and make them accessible to like a room full of gamers, that's a skill. That's like a valuable thing that you can do as a career.
Yeah, so I'll be pretty quick on this, but I've been a gamer since I can remember. I mean, my first system was, and this is going to date me, but the TI-99 back in the day. Shout out to Burger Time. And in high school, I went to public school, but I went to a magnet school that was for technology. And we had 2 T1 lines and would play Quake in the computer lab. And every day we'd play Quake. And so that's how I learned to network. Was one of our teachers was like, hey, if you can figure out how to set up a LAN, you can play versus each other. and so that was kind of the beginning of my villain story. So I went to law school and became, as I said earlier, an IP litigator. So more in court, discovery when you're already at the dispute part of things. And then I realized, well, I didn't always like being at the dispute part. I kind of wanted to cut things off before we got to the dispute part. And that's when I switched to being transactional. And I was looking for a job, and my wife sent me a listing for ZeniMax. And I'm telling you, it was just like completely full circle, like, moment. I'm like, I can have a job where I can be a lawyer and practice really difficult law on something that I love, all while like, wearing T-shirts and Vans to work. And for a lawyer, like, that's the dream. So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey.
So when I was finishing up law school, it was 2013, and in Chicago, there are like 5 different law schools in the area, and I think everyone had the idea of, recession, I'm going to go to law school. That's just what you do, right? So a lot of people graduating, not a lot of jobs. I'm sitting here, I'm taking the bar, I don't have anything lined up, but I had a friend who a couple years behind me in school who was going to be a video game lawyer, and she was going to meet these people and get these jobs and do this, that, and the other, and going to be a video game lawyer. And do you all know Suzanne at Epic? Mm-hmm. Zed?
Yep. Zed.
Yeah. She works in-house at Epic and has for several years, so she made good on that. But back in the past, she's finishing up her first year of law school, and I'm sitting here thinking, I don't have anything to do. But could I, too, perhaps be a video game lawyer, like my friend Suzanne wants to be? So I started, with nothing better to do, I started going to some of the indie game developer meetups in Chicago and the surrounding area, and there's a pretty good, solid indie game scene in Chicago. And I'm going, and I've played a lot of games. My background undergrad was cinema, so not exactly the same, but some similar issues going on there. And hey, I also had this law degree, and just being there, play testing, talking about stuff, being a resource when people ask, so what is this copyright thing I've heard about? And then, when they actually need something, hey, they know a lawyer. And so that's kind of what I've been doing, is just being there, being a part of the indie game scene, and ingratiating myself to everybody. And when they need stuff, they know where to go. So I'm very fortunate to have had things worked out as they did, ultimately.
That's great, because Zed is the reason I got invited to speak at the Video Game Bar Association Summit last year.
Isn't she wonderful?
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to her and also Pierce at Epic Games. My journey is of course different, but I think the video game industry has to manage the greatest amount of complexity in the privacy cybersecurity space, in my professional opinion. I see having to navigate issues of technology already to be difficult, right? Every time you open up your favorite word processing application, how difficult it can be, right? I think, but now imagine trying to do that on top of all the licensing issues, right? On top of, and by the way, you have to have a customized experience per user, but you also have to know what they need help, or if they've been hacked. By the way, your product is so high demand, people are trying to come from inside and outside your company and take it, right? There's so many layers that are true for a lot of industries, but in video games, it's more pronounced and it's more complex. And as a privacy and cybersecurity attorney, I have to be at the cutting edge, and I have a desire to be there. And so, of all the industries I work with, this one is by far one of the most, not only the most interesting, but also frankly the friendliest. I just have such an easy time connecting with the other fellow lawyers here. Not every industry is like that. And so not only being welcoming, but also being cutting edge is kind of how I got to being a support member of the community. So it's been very interesting.
And I'll try to be brief. I actually got into law because of video games. I was a computer science major and wanted to evaluate, what I was going to do next, and met some of my current partners, and they talked to me about what they do as IP attorneys, and I had found them because we run a blog, the Patent Arcade, that's been up for 17 years at this point. And so that got me on the path to law school. And I discovered that I really liked it. And one of my first projects at the firm was we have a gaming laptop that we brought home, and I was playing a very popular arcade tank game. And I was collecting our copyright deposit because we had just released a bunch of new vehicles in the game. I didn't really know how to play, but they gave me this God mode account inside the brand new tank that had just come out at the max level and everything unlocked. And I'm just driving in circles around the map. And so I joined the game, and people see it, and they're like, holy shit, how'd you get the best tank in the game on the first day? And then I immediately die, and then they say, I can't believe how bad you suck. And that's our official deposit material at the Library of Congress.
Cool. Thank you for the question.
If you haven't
Get some
swag,
merch.
come get one.
Cool. All right, let's get.
a 15-minute question.
Yeah, it was a big question. Yeah, you get us to talk about ourselves. That's
Yeah,
even.
perfect. You, second row, black mask. Yep.
How often do you have to explain the background of video games to the industry to the court officials that you're working with?
So how often do you have to actually explain video games in the industry to government officials? I don't actually work with government officials that often, so I don't really have to.
Oh, can I tell a story?
But how about everybody else?
So I was a clerk at the federal circuit for a better part of a year.
It's a federal appellate court.
Yeah, it's an appellate court that deals with patents. And we had a case that was specifically on the 3DS's 3D technology. And I brought in my 3DS and I showed it to the judge. And I was like, look, check this out. This is how it works. And she was incredibly interested in it. That's my say. Yeah.
I have to explain it all the time. So when you're working in patents are all about the technology and how it works. And so in order to get a patent, you have to sort of explain why, because the technology works this way, this is how our invention works and how it solves a problem that is rooted in how technology works. So especially with video game patents, it involves a lot of explaining, well, this is what's different within a virtual world, and this is why this isn't something that happens in real life or a problem that people need to solve outside. And to the USPTO's credit, most of the examiners are very skilled in their technology, and they get it, but it's always helpful to walk through it.
Cool.
Do
Let's
you
keep.
want to field that at all? All right, we'll cut it off there. Go ahead and grab something. You, a few rows back, pink thing in your hair, yellow, yeah.
So I wanted to know, how are AAA studios dealing with emulation, and if there's a process to that? Like, I know some smaller emulators like Citra, they get paid off by Nintendo and that's it, and then like the emulator still works. So if there is a process, is it like a strict process where you can take the emulation down, or is it still something that you guys are trying to figure out?
So how do AAA studios deal with emulators and game emulation? I guess I'm looking at you.
I'm going to leave that to y'all.
All right. I'm not at that level, so I had no idea what people do. Anybody?
I'll flag that this is one of the areas that highlights that law is inexact. There's a lot of things that happen that are technically against the law, and game companies need to decide, what level of that they're going to tolerate. There's also lots of arguments on both sides about the fair use and the preservation angles. So to answer the question, very often in emulation, fan games, that sort of thing, it's about, do you get big enough and impinge too much on their space such that they start to care enough to do something about it? So I mean, we saw that with some of the Switch emulators. I think it was Yuzu, that they were leaking Tears of the Kingdom before it even came out, and you can see how that causes a real clear commercial damage. Whereas people who just want to play old NES games that there's no other way to play, you can see how there are benefits there. So I think a lot of it is cost-benefit analysis, and just as it is so much with fan works and that sort of thing, it's about not taking away from the business of the companies, and then just it's their legal rights. They get to decide what they do with them.
Yeah, I think just in general, though. Whoa, that got turned up a bit.
Sorry, technical difficulty.
there is.
Your mic is dented, so you got to get it even closer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
There is always that sort of cost-benefit analysis, just on the general practical level. On the one hand, with things like leaking Tears of the Kingdom emulator, that's clearly not just a labor of love from a fan. That's just straight up infringement and theft and whatnot. But you go down to the merch booth, Artist Alley, is like 99% of that infringing? Absolutely. Like, there's no question. Is it in the Pokemon Company's best interest to sue somebody who drew a fan picture of Pikachu? Because, gosh, my favorite Pokemon is Pikachu, and I love him so much. Probably not. Like, do you really need to burn that bridge? At some, going down. All right. I'll fix it on the fly. It's fine. It is a cost-benefit analysis. Not only in terms of, do I now have to hire a lawyer to deal with this stuff, and am I going to get out of this person? But the bad publicity of, now we're suing someone for drawing her favorite character in the world, and is that really worth going after someone and the cease and desist letter, or do you just let it go? Or even like some companies do, hey, check out this cool fan art. Capcom is always reposting stuff. Of course, follow the Ace Attorney account, and constantly seeing a bunch of that stuff. And like, hey, look at this cool thing someone did with our characters. So, and obviously, reasonable minds can disagree in some matters. What should be done or not, and how heavy a hand to take. But it really just kind of comes down to the decision makers making a decision about what they'll put up with, which can vary, from day to day and person to person.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Jay, do you ever get any fan art at DOJ?
Actually, what's interesting? I want real quick on that question. Do you feel like the courts have also relaxed the idea that if you don't enforce your copyright, you don't, you're like losing it? Basically, there was a presumption for a while that if you don't actually go and complain, you only complain selectively. Oh, now we care. The courts would be like, well, you didn't do it in the past, so we're kind of not going to hold it up for you. I kind of noticed that, but I wanted to see
I think that's more of a trademark.
Trademark.
Trademark,
Yeah.
that's more the thing. Okay, makes sense.
There are legal doctrines to that effect. Latches recently has more teeth in the patent space than it did before. So if you do have these rights and you kind of give the impression that it is okay for other people to doing stuff, there's always an equitable argument that, well, you you implied that I could do this, so I reasonably relied on that, but that's one of those very difficult arguments to win.
Good to know. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Oh,
it's good.
way more
That's right.
questions.
You, white coat, white wig.
A lot of games now sell loot boxes of various kinds, either for real-world currency or for an in-game currency purchased with real-world currency. How do those not run afoul of gambling laws, and do you think that the legal protections around that are sufficient for consumers who might be vulnerable to gambling?
So how do loot boxes not run afoul of gambling laws? And are consumer protection laws adequate in that space? Oh boy.
I can take that one. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, you
because
can.
like my very first MAGFest panel, I was in house at EA, and we were talking about loot boxes, right? So it is a question that has been, a lot of people have talked about it, and there have been developments. So 5 to 10 years ago, the question, are they gambling? Gambling laws are very specific because they're criminal laws. In most cases, and they come from like near biblical level of like oldness, right? Because they're vice laws, right? These are laws that are designed to protect people from themselves, right? And so for it to be gambling in the capital G, you could go to jail sense of the word, there has to be consideration, chance, and prize. Those are the three elements, and this is the U.S. analysis. It's pretty similar around the world. Where courts have generally landed is, yeah, there's consideration. You paid money for the loot box. Yes, there's chance. There's, the item was given to you by chance, but there's nothing of value because these are just digital ones and zeros. They have no ability to be bought or sold. Now, you might be thinking, what about the ones that can be bought or sold? That's where it gets tricky, right? And we have seen with like Counter-Strike and Valve, they did get in trouble with the Washington State Gambling Commission because you could sell your skins and get real money. And again, the reason these gambling laws exist is because we don't want as a society people playing these games instead of doing something productive societally. Like we don't want you to play them and we don't want you to treat this as a job, essentially. So that is where the law stood for a pretty good chunk of time. It's not gambling, let's move on. But that's not the end of the discussion because we also have consumer protection laws. And there are a lot of ways in which loot boxes were sold, were disclosed or not disclosed in ways that were harming consumers. And the legal standard for there, it isn't about gambling, it's not criminal law, it's civil law. And it's about, is this unfair or deceptive in some way? And that's where we're starting to see a lot of movement. And particularly, and this is pretty recent news, actually just this past week or 2 weeks ago, there was a huge FTC enforcement against Genshin Impact, so Hoyoverse, specifically around, hey, you sold loot boxes to kids. And, you can have a little bit of debate on what the order, what the precedential value is, but the final settlement bans Hoyoverse from selling anything to a user under 16 without parental consent. And that's a pretty major sort of enforcement penalty, showing that they are serious, just from a consumer protection standpoint, we think that these models of buying loot boxes, we don't think that kids should be able to buy them, haphazardly. We think that if the odds are misleading or there's stuff in the complaint about allegedly they had worked with influencers who were misrepresenting how easy it was to get stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of shady practices that are out there and have been enforced against from this general consumer protection angle, and I think that's where things are going. Do we need to get parental consent for all loot boxes going forward? Possibly. I mean, that's a way in which you would mitigate risk. But yeah, that is where it's not a question of is it gambling, is it unfair or hurting people in a way that we can do something about. Does that answer your question?
I will say also, I know I'm not licensed in Europe, but I know certain European countries, a few years ago when it came into the whole loot box issue being a thing, we're like, no, that is gambling actually. That is illegal gambling. And so, sometimes you just don't get to play this game or that game in whatever European country was cracking down on it. Yeah, Belgium specifically.
Yeah, good
all right,
question.
way in the back, white face mask, black hair. You, pointing your head, yeah. How is generative AI being treated in IP law?
What is this, the bar exam?
The answer is the room reaction.
Well, Scott, you and I were just talking about this like last night, so do you want to start us off?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again? Labor and IP law? Those are vastly separate things, so I'm not quite sure what you mean.
Well, I think they do play together because, a lot of the labor that's being replaced is the creative
fair enough.
side. So I can set a little bit of background, and then I'd invite the rest of the panel to share their
Yeah, I can
thoughts.
chime in a sec. Go ahead.
So the use of AI in generating creative works or even inventions, it's a big issue in patents as well. It is something that is currently subject to a lot of change. The Patent Office and the Copyright Office are working on their policies. They have both issued policies. In the copyright space, you need to disclose the use of AI in generating your works, and you need to affirmatively disclaim anything that the AI added. So right now, the current state is whatever AI does has no copyright at all in it, except for the parts that a human put into it. On the patent side, they're much more permissive. They do think the AI cannot provide the inventive part, but the AI can provide a lot of other stuff. I think that it's particularly relevant in the game space. We've heard for years about how generative AI is going to change every single industry. Certainly people are talking about replacing a lot of things that lawyers do, but I think it is just very relevant in the game space because so much of the game work is I need to fill dialogue for 5 different towns over 15 hours, or I need 20 variations of this night. And generative AI is just very good at that. It's certainly very disruptive, and I think that it is going to mean that we need less copywriters and less people to just kind of play around and make filler content. But I think that there's a lot of positives in how it opens up and sort of makes it a lot easier to create content. And we've seen that before with level editors and games that encourage people to be creative and build more. I think we can look at generative AI as a tool that sort of opens up people's ability to create. Can't really speak much to the labor side. I don't know that there's big legal efforts in that space. I think a lot of that's
I can think of one. I know currently a lot of anime video game voice actors are on strike right now, specifically over the issue of we don't want the big studios using AI to replicate our voices or images or other aspects of persona and whatnot. Personage, not the video games. And so they've been fighting on this and on strike for months now. And I think that is probably where we're going to see some level of movement. You have some fairly big name and mid-name actors who are throwing themselves behind this all in, and they have a lot of fans, and a lot of their fans will take some of umbrage of you're taking away work from my favorite voice actor here to replace it with a bot. I don't like that, and I think that's likely going to be driving at least some of this, some of those union issues, union contracts that will eventually have ripples out to just general practices at large. I have no special insight here. None of my clients are dealing with this. I have on the studio side gotten requests from people to include in the contract, hey, don't use AI to make a copy of my voice for your game. And that's never been a problem. Everyone's really cool with that. As if you'd even have to ask, it's kind of a weird thing. Oh, you're concerned that we're going to do that? No, of course we're above board, but don't trust that. For everyone except my clients, we're all good. But I have very little special insight in this. It's just I know that has been a big thing that's been going on. And so I expect at some point something's going to give. on that. But the strike continues, and I say more power to them.
One quick insight I want to add too, for those of you who want to become lawyers in-house and they're about to deploy generative AI, one of the best practices is when they say, well, this will save 80 hours. 80 hours from where? Which team? Is it going to be a contractor that supports it? You might have to renegotiate the contract with the contractor, right? If it's an employee that's in a certain country, they might have laws against taking away hours without any sort of notice or anything. So you shouldn't just accept the speech about what you're getting savings. I think that's kind of implied. You got to make sure you ask where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I'll throw out for the aspiring lawyers in the room or people who are interested in this stuff that this is one of the hottest issues in law right now, and it is an evolving issue. There's a lot of opportunity to get involved and to make your voice heard. The Copyright Office currently has, they're taking comments and they're working towards their next round of policy, and they really genuinely want to engage with the stakeholders and see where we should be going. So it's a great opportunity if you are interested in the law to make an impact.
Yeah, if you are law students specifically and you want to put together your note or article for class or journal or what have you, there's a lot to talk about here. So by all means, that might be a good topic for your class note.
I'm going to hit one other angle, because I understood the question a little bit differently. How is AI going to change the practice of law itself, right? Because that is something, particularly for the aspiring lawyers here, like that is really, like I think about that a lot. And my company, we have one of our key things is this global compliance engine and database. We keep a database of 200 different jurisdictions and all the laws, and we're synthesizing the laws in all these different jurisdictions, and we constantly get the questions like, well, you could save a lot of money if you just had AI do it and like have an AI tell you what the law is. And no, absolutely not. And it's something that's very important, and the reason that it is important, and again, I'm for the aspiring lawyers here, I think this is really like, you will run into this issue if you try and go get a job. You have to prove that what you bring to the table beyond what an AI can provide, because you guys are going to be in direct competition with AI. And the number one tip that I can give you is AIs cannot be held accountable. If a lawyer screws something up, if they make a mistake, if they get their cites wrong, if they make a mistake in the law, they're going to get in trouble in a real way. They're very motivated, and they might make a mistake, but they're human and they can own that mistake. An AI is never going to feel sorry that it messed something up. It's never going to, they'll be like, okay, adjust my algorithm, but it doesn't have the incentive to be right the same way that a human has that incentive. And the way that you can succeed as a lawyer in this new weird AI world is to be human and to be accountable and to try and show what you bring above and beyond just reciting the facts. That's
and I have PSA. Seen multiple instances in the past couple of years hitting the legal news sites and stuff of court briefs filed by lawyers that included citations to cases that don't exist. Because just have AI write this for you, okay, and then no one bothers to check it, no one bothers to make sure that actually was correct, which everyone should be doing. Even, you have the intern write something, yeah, you're the lawyer signing your name on that brief you file with the court, you should be looking it over anyway. But certainly when a computer does it, like 10 times more. But no, it just makes up stuff because all it knows is pattern recognition, and all right, I can make something up with this pattern. Sure, that's great. Here you go. And no one checked it, and then opposing counsel gets a hold of it, and like, what is this? This doesn't exist. Your Honor, we'd like to fine them many thousands of dollars for this obvious malpractice. Like, all right, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Granted.
As a lawyer, your credibility is like everything.
That's what I was going to add, was that if the judge's opinions in those type cases with the AI briefs have shown us anything, it's that judges have absolutely no patience for that type of, I think what they see at this point as negligence in citing things that don't exist.
I want to highlight that one of those cases was even worse than that. They had filed a brief that had fake cites in it, and they got a order to show cause to sort of say, why shouldn't you be sanctioned? And so he asked ChatGPT to give him the cases, and it made up the actual cases. And so he doubled down and
I did not
got it
hear
a
that
lot.
part. Wow.
All the cringing in the audience, that's the difference between us and AI. We can cringe. All right, cool. We tackled AI. Done.
All right, excellent.
Nothing, no other questions.
Front row, you there, blue shirt.
I wanted to invite Laura to talk a little bit about the ZeniMax acquisition and whether you feel after or before things were, how has the momentum shifted and like what are the struggles now that Microsoft is involved? And whether you like it better now.
Feel free to say no.
So the question was, could I talk about the Microsoft acquiring ZeniMax and how things are now? And so, no, I'm not going to directly answer that, but I'll give a high-level answer. I've been with ZeniMax for 10 years, and ZeniMax is a constantly growing, changing company. It always has been. And I started under our former CEO, Robert Altman, who ran a very inspiring, he was one of those individuals that you meet and he could have told me to jump off of a mountain and I would have done it because we all trusted him that much. And so through that leadership, he is now passed on. Through that leadership, we created such a tight-knit family as a company that I'm not sure ownership matters at the end of the day, but having a company, the size of Microsoft with the resources of Microsoft behind us, I think has and will help to, to smooth out some of those day-to-day things that take away from the creativity and the ability to just focus on the games. And that's where, we're hopeful we're moving together. Now, that's totally my opinion. I do not speak on behalf of anybody. But, so it's been a change, but a good one.
Grab some stuff. All right, you in the front with the horns have had your hand up for the last 5 minutes, like nonstop, so I'll give it to you.
Obviously, there are some issues in the law that have been addressed with an oversaturation of attorneys, and it's created a lot of competition. What does competition look like in video game law, and is it something that people who are coming into this space should definitely be keeping in mind when it comes to networking?
So what does competition look like in the video game lawyer industry, and what should you think about when networking?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, I think you're in a great position to start us off.
So my number one piece of advice for anybody who wants to become a game lawyer is just have the passion for the games. Have the fundamentals of law, and obviously you have to have a legal education and you have to pass a bar exam, but what I know that generally when we're looking to find somebody new for the company or for the department, we're looking for that game passion. And that's what sets people above and beyond. It's not necessary that you've necessarily, practiced game-specific law for 5 years, but if I'm sitting here talking to you about a job and you're like, yeah, but I've put 2,000 hours into Skyrim, I'm like, okay, she bumps to the top of the list. So a lot of it is just about the passion, because at the end of the day, we're all gamers.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and it's maybe gonna sound like I'm pushing back, but it's not. The other thing is, and this is a little bit of cold water, there are a lot of people who want to become video game lawyers now. Like, it's actually a kind of, because it's a fun job. And do you know how many law jobs are fun?
It's not many.
So yeah, I talked to a bunch of, I've been doing these panels and people come up to me, it's like, I played 2,000 hours in Skyrim, can I have a job? And it's like, well, you actually also have to be a really good lawyer, right? And these are highly, highly competitive jobs to get. And you really do, you have to study, you have to be, really good at, your academics, you have to be really, if you're in a law firm, you've got to really be a thought leader. Think about like, these issues on a deep level, and really like, and use your entire brain, right? And be a good writer, be a good arguer. Like because these are such fun jobs, and because they are so interesting, like what Jay was saying, like they are actually really, really hard, like orders of magnitude more complex than a lot of different other types of law. You just got to be super sharp, and you got to be constantly in a learning mentality and trying to, up your own game.
Can I add to just Joe's point too, that I think what they're both saying too is that cross-training is a big reason why I think it's something that you should all consider, right? I encounter the scenario a lot where someone's really good at law, but the problem is both law and how to get it done, operations, right? It's both law and the technology itself, technical. And I consider the triangle to be, legal, technical, and operations. How do you get it done with what tools and what's required to get done? And that's how we kind of navigate emerging technology issues, right? We try to think about, well, what is the technology? What is it doing to victims or like to the country, like national security wise? And then what are the legal requirements now and how should they change? I think it's a really great opportunity for you all, right? There is more complexity, so you need someone who understands complexity and is willing to expand past it. There's a less of a need for someone who's specialist in one thing. I'd love to have someone like a Sam or like a computer science major, right? Who's became a lawyer because he's able to blend those two things together. And so being able to blend those things and being willing to learn outside of your rank. Oh, I can't tell you. I'll get this off my plate, okay? How many lawyers are like, well, I'm a lawyer, I don't do that. That's a frustrating answer in 2025, okay? Just don't do that. Don't be that person.
I do want to, in addition to, playing games and knowing law, when it comes to entertainment law, now it depends on what fields you're all in terms of being a video game lawyer, because that covers a lot of different things. There's not like video game law is a thing. Like there is a law of evidence, and what is evidence? And how do you keep things out? What comes in? Or property or contracts. What is a contract? There's not like video game law, except for like 2 or 3 cases maybe that are the law of video games. It's a bunch of stuff. There's patents. There's privacy. There's all sorts of data, everything. There's compliance. There's copyrights and trademarks and contracts and all sorts of stuff. And what goes behind a lot of that is the video game industry and knowing like how, for me specifically, maybe not for most of the other people here, which is fine, by the way, but I'm working with a lot of people who are in the trenches making games, and I'm overseeing like the entirety of the process from the lawyer side. So knowing, how the game gets made, what goes into it, what are industry trends, what are publishers looking for, do we even want to deal with the publisher in the first place, or what are other avenues to get the game made and put up somewhere, and all that sort of background industry knowledge, which is the same thing if you go into music law or film or sports or whatever. It's not just knowing the law, and it's not just, I like playing Skyrim. It's part of it is knowing how does Skyrim happen? How does a game get made, and what are people who make games or interact with games doing? And that's part of what happens and what you need to know about when you're advising your clients. I would also say, mostly agreeing with what everyone else has said, these are certainly competitive issues, but if you are willing to go out there and find people, I am one of like 3 video game lawyers that I'm aware of in Illinois, like at all. I don't know where any other aspiring lawyers or actual lawyers are who want to get into this space. There are probably people you could meet and groups you could show up to as long as you know your stuff and are willing to just hang out with people and make those connections. And you could be, the Oregon or Maine or New Mexico video game lawyer if you find those people and connect yourself in. So, you can't have 10 people doing that all at once, or there's not going to be enough work to go around probably. Another option, though, is, I have my 3 or 4 video game clients and the tax law practice or whatever it's going to be, and the estate planning and the small claims litigation stuff. And also on the side, I have these video game clients. So that's certainly an avenue. And even, long-term, 5-10 year career goals, maybe we can phase out that tax practice, except insofar as my video game clients have to pay taxes, or whatever that's going to be. But there are opportunities out there. Some you might have to make for yourself, and sometimes you might be disappointed, and sometimes you might have to work for peanuts, because it might shock some of you to learn that small indie game studios, not known for huge legal budgets. Sad fact of life. But, things are out there. So just because you're not getting in-house at ZeniMax or working on cutting edge Nintendo patents or whatever, don't get discouraged. There is stuff out there.
Well, and just a quick word of caution, too. I mean, being a video game lawyer sounds really cool, but it can also be really hard, because a lot of times we're the ones that have to say no to what non-lawyer Laura thinks is a really cool idea. Like, hey, can we send people in a rocket ship to Pluto or Mars or whatever? Yeah, that sounds awesome, but there may be some legal risk involved. So, a lot of times as counsel, as in-house counsel, we're the ones that have to be the bad guy and talk some of the really awesome ideas back into legally palpable package.
Or even, the even worse than no is, I don't know. Like, because we are on the cutting edge of things. Is it okay if we do this? Like, I don't know. Maybe I can tell you in 2 hours of research, or maybe we'll just have to wait till the jury lets us know. And that's an actual answer you have to give sometimes. We are down to, I think, our last question. Let's.
Hey, wait, before
we
we
got a lot
take the
more.
last one, y'all take merch on your way out, please.
Yeah.
We'll keep talking. We'll
Yeah,
stick, as long
we'll
as
be
they don't
around
kick us
until
out.
MAGFest staff kicks us out physically. But let's go, you in the blue shirt, I see, looking down at your shirt with a clock or something, yeah. Yep, stand up, point to yourself.
Do you have a thought on how to so as digital goods, we don't own a license to our games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any thoughts on how software publishers or developers, if they wanted to, could actually make it so they own their games? I know GOG is sort of trying to do with you sellers, but is there actually any thoughts on how to make a framework for digital ownership?
So typically all of the digital goods and even a lot of the digital games, you don't own those. They're licensed to you under certain terms. Is there any thoughts here about how people can actually own their games? I say keep buying physical is my soapbox issue, but I will.
It's a hot button issue because California just passed a new portion of a false advertising law that says you have to disclose, you as either the seller of record or as the game maker have to disclose to someone before the purchase that this is a license, you're not buying this, you're not owning this outright. And has to link to the terms of service or the end user license agreement where it explains all of that. So I don't necessarily have an opinion on your question and on the ownership, but there is a push, at least in California, which for most people is going to apply to everyone because it's kind of hard to implement something for one state alone. This is definitely an issue that is at the forefront and that they're shining a lot of light on and transparency on. I don't know if anybody else has.
I mean, to your question about making a system for it, people just have to stop doing it. That's one way. If you want to allow people to own your games, you can make that decision. Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be around to keep chatting for a while. Come get some cool swag, and
Thank you guys for
thanks
coming.
for coming.